All right, so here's a really weird one for you guys. I diagnosed this Ruud furnace last night, as having a failed module, this ignition control module. I've done hundreds of these. Here's the old module. So the symptoms I was having was, the way this one works, you have high voltage here, and then it comes out to the igniter, and then this side is all 24 volts. So you have 24 volt coming in off the thermostat and then going out to the valve, right? So pretty simple, 24 in, 24 out. And yesterday when I diagnosed it, basically we had in, but we didn't have out. And the symptoms was that the gas valve was not energizing. The igniter was working, the 120 side was fine, but the gas valve would not energize, and I pulled off the leads here and I wasn't getting any output. So I determined this module was bad, and ordered a new one for her. Came back today to replace it. Turned on the furnace, symptoms were the same. Turned the furnace off, swapped out the module. This is the new module. It's the exact same module, same setup, 120 volts, 24 volts, right? So watch what happens when I plug this thing in. Get my big Larry flashlight. Okay, so here's my Klein meter. I already found a good ground point on the burners, looking at the module. So this is my 120 line in. I just pulled it off of this tab right here, right? So if I check it now on the 120 L1, I get 2.7 volts AC, which is nothing. There's no voltage there. And then if I test this terminal, that's my high voltage in, that should be about 120. If we look at the Klein meter, 122.5 volts AC. So L1 is hot, we're good. If I look at the 24 volt side, again, 2.6 volts, that's nothing. There's no input, nothing present. However, keep in mind, this is supposed to be 24 volts out, from the thermostat out to the valve. So it's coming out from the valve and it's going right here to this gas valve. This gas valve is 24 volts AC. So now watch what happens when I plug in. When I plug in this L1, okay. So that L1 that we just measured right here, 125 volts, plugged into the board. Everything else is the same. This is our low voltage side. This is supposed to get 24 volts from the thermostat. Now watch what happens. If we go to the gas valve terminal, which is this guy right here, second one in, that's supposed to be a 24 output. $120 volts. Let me turn that back on. 120 volts AC. And this is on the thermostat input. It's supposed to be 24 volts, 120. If I look at the 24 volt ground, 120. If I put my meter on this random little tab that's supposed to screw it down, 119 volts. So somewhere internally, this board is bad. And I just noticed actually there's this little, like a Sharpie mark on the board where it's been like crossed over. As far as I know, this thing's bad. That's crazy, I never seen that before. So hopefully it didn't screw up the gas valve by sending 120 volts to it. All right guys, little follow up on this one. So I panicked for a couple minutes and I was like, oh man, this part's bad, like what the heck? But then I remembered, dug deep down the memory banks, and I remembered on these Robert Shaw control modules, if you look, there's that little silver foot that's underneath the screw, and it looks like it's just a mounting tab, but it's actually a ground. And I remember from working on these back in the day, if you don't have that screw all the way in and tightened down, then this control doesn't ground properly, and it won't work right. And so when I ran it the first time, I didn't have that screw in. Because I wanted to put the board in and just hook everything up and run it, just to, I always check before I proceed with buttoning everything up. I always just do a basic run through and make sure everything looks right. So yeah, I did that, and then it didn't work, and I panicked, and I was like, what the heck? And then the reason I remembered was I put back on the original part, just plugged it in, hanging off the furnace, and it gave me the exact same thing, the weird voltage. And then my memory was like, wait a minute, dug down deep, and I remembered that's a ground point, and you have to connect to that. So great thing to remember if you guys are working on these old furnaces, that one little screw, if it's not tight or you don't put it in, it will ruin your day. So the minute I put it in and tightened it down, the 120 volts went away on the other terminals, and now I fire it up and it's giving me 27 straight to the coil. So whew, man, that was a sweaty one, but we got it. All right, so I just finished up with that repair, swapping out the ignition control module, got that all squared away. And that really just reminded me, that being a good tech is really about, having strong diagnostic and troubleshooting skills, and not just having a solid diagnostic and always knowing what's wrong, but, being able to really problem solve and work through the problem and, not stop till you have a solution. Because I easily, as soon as I put that part in, I could tell something wasn't right, and it would have been easy to just been like, oh man, it's a bad part, and just, go to Gensco and swap it out, and then, come back and you have the same issue, and you're like, you don't know what's wrong, and then you start changing other parts, and it could have been a big mess, but, realizing something wasn't right, and then going back and retesting your diagnostic, putting the other part back in. I mean, it's really important to be thorough, even when you mess up. Everybody makes mistakes, and I mean, not even that was really a mistake as much as it's just I didn't go all the way, initially on getting that part swapped out. So just always a reminder to be thorough and make sure that you're always just double checking and digging in deep and not giving up. So good work today. That was a nice end to the day, to my 11-hour day. So going home now.